and she has 15 years of experience working on active crime scenes. Also with us, Assistant Chief Jailer, former Chief of Major Crime Section, Lieutenant Colonel Adam Lee. Adam served 28 years as a police officer, and as the Chief of Major Crime Section, he oversaw homicides, robberies, special victims units, and a gun assault team. Great to have you both here. Your expertise is needed. Let's get right to our first story, a motorcycle club shooting. This coming from WEWS in Cleveland, Ohio.
3804 East 93rd Street. East 93rd Street? I got multiple gunshot victims down.
Chaos. And calls for help. 31 911 calls flooded dispatchers Saturday night after a shooting at a building near East 93rd Street and Way Avenue in the Union Miles Park neighborhood. By the light of day, the bullet holes were easy to see. 17 people shot, 1 man dead. Police say several organized motorcycle groups were involved. The party at this warehouse, hosted by the Omens Motorcycle Club. Members of the Zulus and Wheels of Soul were there too. The shooting reportedly started after some people were asked to leave. Only News 5's cameras captured Cleveland police detectives scouring the neighborhood looking for anything that might lead them to those who fired into this building and killed 48-year-old Andre Lee Dixon.
Without even leaving from my home, my heart just was reaching out to the people that was hurt, the families that is hurt, the damage that has been done.
William Young is a deacon at this church down the street. He is hoping church leaders, community leaders, and community members can come together in hopes of trying to stop the violence before it gets worse.
Anyone that has a concern about what took place here, think about the families that the damage was done to the families, and come on out. Have a voice in this community here. It can start right here.
In the meantime, police too are hoping to find those who shot and killed Dixon before more violence between the clubs breaks out.
All right, my first question coming out of this one, is it tough to get members of a motorcycle club to talk and give you information that you need? Let me begin with you, Lieutenant Colonel Adam Lee. Is it tough to get motorcycle club members to speak?
Absolutely, Vinny. There's a gang culture that exists in most of these motorcycle clubs. I mean, they do things, nice things. They communicate with communities, and they have toy drives. They do special things at Christmas and holidays and whatnot. But at the end of the day, most of them are involved in a gang culture type situation. And the old adage, snitches get stitches, comes into play in most cases when there is violence that occurs. This is not uncommon. I've seen it many, many times over the years, this type of violence and killing surrounding motorcycle clubs.
All right, Jennifer Shen, we've got someone who was shot and killed. There's bullet holes everywhere. You go to that scene. What are you looking to pick up forensically?
Well, it seemed like this actually is very rich in forensics. You can look at the trajectory holes themselves and identify where people were standing when they shot the weapon. But more importantly, the fired cartridge cases are really helpful in guiding our investigators as to who might be involved. And that is because in this day and age, we no longer need blood or semen or body fluid to get a DNA profile. We could actually get DNA profile from just someone handling something. So we are able to get DNA profiles from fired cartridge cases. And while that profile might not necessarily mean that that person loaded the weapon or shot it, it certainly gives our detectives some information as to where they should start looking.
And Lieutenant Colonel, it's obvious that there's a lot of people there. Someone knows who did this, obviously, and people on both sides may actually know. What would motivate them to potentially speak and give evidence to law enforcement?
There's not a whole lot. Unfortunately, in most cases, they will try to take the law into their own hands. If they know who did it, there's bound to be some vengeance involved in the situation.
Next story from KNXV in Phoenix. A carjacking survivor speaks out.
Gunshot first through the humerus, which landed about a pinky width away from my heart.
Karen Peterson still has the visual reminder of the shooting outside Desert Sky Mall, where she waited in her car to meet a friend when a man walked up.
And the second I start the car, he shoots me. Never said a word. And that's why I pulled forward, hit that little bump. He repositions himself in front. And I threw it in reverse. Threw myself to the passenger seat.
Karen says that's when the guy shot her again. Here's a picture of her car with the bullet hole.
He said nothing. If you wanted my car, you could have had it. I would have filled it with gas. Go ahead.
Shot in her car, Karen called 911.
I have been shot twice.
The suspect, later identified as 38-year-old Richard Ruiz. Phoenix police say after shooting Karen, he carjacked the driver of a truck, then shot another man in the parking lot. That man seen hiding in surveillance video.
All right, we're in pursuit.
Throughout the crowded parking lot, officers after the stolen truck, trying to stop the seemingly random attacks, ultimately shooting and killing Ruiz.
I'm here for a reason, because I'm still here, so there must be something that I need to do.
Karen feels fortunate she survived, able to see her new grandchild, and says she's not mad at the shooter, but may never know why he pulled the trigger.
I'm glad it was me instead of someone else. Because maybe they didn't have the support system, maybe they didn't have the belief, maybe they didn't have what they needed to get through it.
And today I talked with Phoenix police, and they tell me even now, more than 2 months later, they still don't know what prompted Ruiz to start shooting. Amazing story of survival, but what should you do if you're being carjacked? This is a difficult situation. In this case, very unusual. He didn't speak. He said nothing. Just started firing the gun. But Jennifer, what advice would you give to folks? You know, someone's got a gun. They're trying to take your car. How do you react? What do you do?
Well, I mean, if you can, I mean, nothing is worth being shot, and handing over the car, the keys, etc. would be the way to go. I don't think she had an opportunity to do any of those things. So all I can suggest is to be incredibly aware of your surroundings when you're in a parking lot. Make sure that you know who's around you, and be very cautious. A very alert person is more likely to notice someone that wants to do you harm.
Lieutenant Colonel, this is a difficult one because he didn't speak, said nothing, and looked like he was going after more victims. And in the end, law enforcement had no choice but to take his life.
That's correct. And what Jennifer just said was absolutely 100% correct. You want to absolutely cooperate. Don't try to fight back. This is a very unusual situation. This man appeared to be on some sort of a rampage. It's highly unusual that an individual that is carjacking will shoot first, unless there is some fight back or something. You know, the person resists, then they may get shot in most cases. But this is highly unusual for this man to have done this. I would venture to say that he has some psychological issues.
And in the end, what she was facing, Jennifer, was a man with a gun in front of her. She puts it in reverse, ducks out of the way. I guess the only other option was to put it into drive and go forward, but in the end, she did survive here. But that's a difficult split-second decision.
And I actually, I just commend her for that. I mean, how amazing to be able to think so quickly. I don't think she could go forward because of the barrier. So throwing it into reverse, moving to the side, she probably saved her life that way. And I just think that is incredible.
She's with her grandchildren.